think the timeless truth, and this goes back to how Bitcoin is designed and why it's so important to me, is that money is truly just a form of energy. It's a form of organized energy. And the person who channels the most energy in the right way, in the most efficient way, in the most effective way, is the one who gets the rewards. And not only do you need to channel it, but you also need to know how to keep it. And I think that there's so many great parallels between Bitcoin and wealth principles that if you understand both how to channel energy, to convert it, and to store it, you have all of the raw materials that you need to build, and not just build, but sustain wealth. Because many entrepreneurs build something incredible and they do great at building a business. And then when it comes to actually keeping what they've created, they suffer and they unfortunately don't train themselves to become great investors.
All right, guys, welcome to the Winner Circle podcast. And I'll be your host today. And to be honest with you, I'm thrilled for you to have joined us today for this episode, which is Mining Abundance. And that's how Beau Turner is redefining wealth through clean Bitcoin innovation. So today, just like I told you earlier, we have somebody very interesting, the CEO and co-founder of Abundant Minds, a company transforming how individuals engage with Bitcoin mining. Interesting. And the interesting thing about Burr is his journey is one of curiosity, conviction, and innovation, rooted in a belief that every day people should have access to the tool. That means every day people should have access to. So, with a background spanning engineering, entrepreneurship, and real estate, Paul has built one of the most transparent and sustainability focused Bitcoin mining operations in the US through Abundant Minds. And in our conversation today, we share how the world of Bitcoin mining is evolving, what ethical and clean mining really looks like, and why decentralization might be the most important financial revolution of our time. So I want you to join us as we explore how vision, purpose, and innovation can empower the next generation of wealth creators, and why the future of money may be far more personal, sustainable, and abundant than we think. So let's dive in. Good morning.
Thanks for having me, Jay. It's great to be here.
All right, you're welcome. So, to be honest with you, your journey from entrepreneurship to founding Abundant Minds is an inspiring one. What initially drew you into the world of Bitcoin and blockchain?
Well, for Bitcoin specifically, I found it in 2015, and I think it was because I had a family.
Hey, winners, have you got a business or brand that deserves to shine? I'm just saying this right now because I'm giving the opportunity for you to advertise on Winner Circle with Jay and connect with thousands of ambitious entrepreneurs and leaders who are about growth. It's all about growth. So whether you are advertising a product or a service, secure your slot as low as $100. So what are you waiting for? Email us at advert@winnercirclewithj.com. Here at Winner Circle with Jay, we just don't talk success, we create success. All right, see you soon.
A history of being invested in alternative assets, and specifically gold was the thing that I learned about from the time that I was very young. And since most of the time when people are learning about Bitcoin, gold is the most easy and fruitful comparison to help people understand what it is, I feel like I was naturally wired to understand it. And even though I understood it, I definitely didn't get enough of it my first exposure. So it took several years. It took me being full-time in real estate and finishing out my engineering studies before about 5 years later, I decided, hey, this is still really interesting. It's gotten quite a lot bigger since the first time that I saw it. Maybe I could make a career out of this. And so I started actually liquidating my real estate portfolio to get further into Bitcoin. And along the way, decided that mining was going to be the most natural way for me to both build wealth and build a business in this space, because it was a way to get Bitcoin native cash flow. And started out initially just wanting to be a customer, like the people that I currently serve through my company. I just wanted to have a passive Bitcoin mining experience. But my wife and I, just a couple of weeks after we got engaged, got involved with a host who we lost about $500,000 with. And so that was our first really painful experience in the space. And out of that, we decided to build our own data center here in Oregon and host our own machines. And then along the way, we decided we would make our space available to other people, other business owners, other investors who were looking for the same thing that we were, which is a way to get into Bitcoin mining, but do it safely. So we essentially just built the business to satisfy our own need and made it available to other people and bootstrapped it from the ground up. And I'm happy to say that we're several years into it, hundreds of clients, thousands of
Hmm.
machines, and just growing like a weed.
Growing like a weed. That's great. And the fact that, a lot of people, when they talk about Bitcoin, they think about technology. Was there this personal moment when you realized that this is not just about technology, it's about financial revolution for you?
I think I fit the mold of many people, which is I came for the money, came for the investment, and then stayed for the revolution. I definitely saw this at first as something interesting and potentially transformative, but mostly through the lens of it being a good investment. And it wasn't until 2020 and 2021 when I started picking up a few more books on the subject and realizing how deep this rabbit hole went, not just in terms of financial technology, but energy technology and how integrated it was likely to be with the world of the future, that I understood, wow, this is not just going to make a lot of people rich. This is going to provide financial freedom to a whole class of people. I mean, most of the people on earth who otherwise have no access to it. And that, coupled with everything that I was learning about energy at the time, made me believe that not only was this something that I could get into that was going to be very lucrative and make me very successful, but that I would have a great time changing the world while doing it. And that really anybody who was getting into it was a part of something that was reshaping some of the most foundational ways that we cooperate as human beings.
Well, how do you define abundance in the context of wealth and life?
Well, abundance has a lot of different definitions. I think most people think of it as an abundance of wealth or abundance of resources, but abundance can just mean fulfillment of purpose or having love and having joy in your life. And so to me, the word abundance signifies a very holistic way of being in the world in which all of your needs are met and then some, to the point that you can actually share what you have with others. And that was what I wanted to guide the spirit of the company, because, we could have just as easily been for profit minds, but I like wherever I go, if I can, to inspire people to not just make something for themselves, but to live a life that is inspiring to them and is inspiring to others. So to me, the word abundance is just a way of programming people to go out and design a better life for themselves. And hopefully our service has something to do with that.
That's very interesting. No, so now moving forward, my own take about abundance has always been like freedom. And when you talk about freedom, abundance of freedom for you. And when I talk about freedom, financial freedom, you know, health, and also you not having to be stuck into the same routine all over and all over again. Being free, I just put it together with the word freedom. Free to live and free to believe. And moving forward, your organization does Bitcoin mining. Not everybody knows Bitcoin mining. I'm lucky enough to know what Bitcoin mining is. Not everybody, people, when you talk about Bitcoin, they just, okay, a way to just put my money in and put it in Bitcoin. And when it goes up, they think about stock trading, like, crypto trading. That's what they think
Mhm.
about. They really don't know about the mining part of it. So I would want you to explain in a very simple term, something relatable terms for my listeners who are mostly business owners and leaders and, in their field to understand that in a few seconds.
Of course. Well, anybody that owns Bitcoin has miners to thank for the security of that network and the security of the asset that they hold. So you can think of miners in a few ways. In essence, all mining is doing is taking a raw resource, energy, transforming it through computing power into a finished commodity called Bitcoin. And in that process, it's providing a couple of very useful services to the Bitcoin network. One is that energy and that computing power throws up a security wall of encryption that makes the network very hard to attack. It's part of why Bitcoin has value, is that it has been running at essentially 100% uptime for the last 16 years, and nobody's been able to hack it or break it. And that's partially because miners are expending so much energy and computing power to defend the network. And the other aspect of it is that miners are actually the highway of people moving value across the network. So if I send you Bitcoin or you send me Bitcoin, every time we move that Bitcoin on the network, there's a fee associated with that. It's part of what we would call the security budget, is essentially paying miners a fee so that you can move value across the network safely. And that's the other way that miners are making money. So we're both
Mm,
mining new Bitcoin and we're also getting paid in transaction fees for the
mm.
people who are moving value across the network. But you can basically just consider it an essential service to how Bitcoin operates. It's one of the three pillars is you have the holders of the coins, you have the nodes who are running the software and verifying the rules and basically setting policy, and then you have the miners who are executing, performing the work and getting the economic rewards for making sure that the network is secure, stable, and has transactions flowing through it in a healthy manner.
All right, that's super. That's super great. You talked about energy consumption, and I really want to put a note on that. We all know, like at least I did some research on that, and I found out is one of the biggest criticism of Bitcoin mining. So how is Abundant Mind addressing this challenge differently?
So there's a few misconceptions I like to talk about around energy, and there's no way that we could get to all of them. But suffice it to say that the Bitcoin network, when people say it uses a lot of energy, they're comparing it to using no energy at all, which I think is kind of an unfair comparison. If you were to compare the Bitcoin network's energy usage to like the traditional financial system, it is an order of magnitude larger in terms of the energy that it takes to run our traditional financial system, not to mention all the paper, the buildings, these things that are far more damaging to environments than just raw energy use. The other thing I'll say is that the more energy that we use as a civilization, the more prosperous we are. So it's actually counterintuitively, despite what many people have heard when they hear about energy, that we need to use less of it. We actually need to continually use more of it. And using more energy is responsible for all of the major advancements in civilization and quality of life. There's a chart that circulates that correlates the energy use of countries and their overall prosperity and wealth. And you'll never find a wealthy country that is poor in energy resources or poor in their ability to channel and consume energy. So I just want to highlight that before we say anything else. But of course, the source of energy that you use matters. Nobody likes it if a miner goes and sets up near an abandoned coal plant and restarts it and starts emitting things into the air. Mining itself is a zero emissions activity. You're just plugging in a computer. So the only way that you can actually have emissions is if you are using dirty sources of electricity. So the way that we personally address that in the company is we're based in the Pacific Northwest, where our energy sources are almost 100% renewable, primarily through hydropower, with a little bit of nuclear, wind, solar, and biogas mixed in. But the vast majority of all the energy that we procure to use for this is hydropower, which is extremely clean, extremely stable, and one of the better ways that you can choose to power your miners.
Thank you for that clarification. And I know you guys focus on clean energy. I know that. So one of the questions that was sent when we are meant to have this conversation that was sent by some of our subscribers and listeners, they asked one thing that's very important, and they talk about crypto being risky. How do you help people reframe that mindset?
That's such a great question and a great mindset. Is it's really true that crypto is risky. And I like to separate crypto from Bitcoin. I spent several years in the broader crypto ecosystem, of which there's now, if not tens of thousands, then probably millions of different coins. And it took me several years of burning my hand on the stove to realize that there's very little true innovation in the crypto space that's doing something useful for somebody. Whereas Bitcoin is going after reinventing the largest addressable market in the world, which is store of value assets and money. And in my opinion, if you do nothing else but just focus on Bitcoin and focus on accumulating and saving Bitcoin and ignore the rest of the crypto space, you're probably shutting yourself off from most of the risk and turmoil that you could experience getting into this space. The second thing that I'll say is, especially now that we've had a small price dip that's shaking people out, psychologically, this market moves very fast. and in many ways is challenging for the human mind to weather if you don't have a very long-term mindset. So I started out buying Bitcoin. I was a trader for a little while. I'm happy to say I no longer do any trading. I was very bad at it. I don't consider myself a good trader. And the reason that I got out of trading was psychologically, it was very hard for me when I was going into a position and then I saw it go down. And part of the reason that I love mining so much is that it's a very different mindset. Instead of you going and buying an asset at the market price and hoping that the price goes up, you're producing an asset at a discount. So, for example, if Bitcoin's trading at 100,000 right now, the most efficient miners are making a Bitcoin for about 50 to 60,000. So even if Bitcoin goes down to 80 or it goes up to 120, it doesn't really matter that much to you because you're producing it at a discount and it's coming in as consistent income. So wherever I can, there's a mathematically optimized way to invest. And I'm sure that I'm missing all kinds of opportunities out there. But there's also a psychologically optimized way to invest. And that's just accepting the reality that we are humans, that we make imperfect decisions, and that when things happen in our environment, we react to them very differently. So, setting up an investment strategy that supports you being psychologically stable and emotionally stable is going to be the most winning strategy over the long term. And you see this with the most successful investors. They don't get over leveraged, they don't over allocate to the point that if they're wrong for a period of time, they have to sell their investment or they have to sell at a loss. So I think that's one of the most important things you can do is not just mine, but also adopt the right time horizon, adopt the right mentality. This is not a trade. This is not an investment in the way that many people think of buying something low and then selling it high. This is truly a new form of money. And I think the best way that I could frame it for people is this is a technologically upgraded savings account. And if you treat it like a savings account and have a multi-year, if not multi-decade time horizon for what you're holding this for, then you're going to be much more successful than the person trying to be fast money, 100x gains, leverage trades. I think there's a very responsible and mature way that you can approach this market, and that will set you apart from most of the people who are just tourists.
All right. Thank you so much for clarifying that. Because a lot of people want quick money with Bitcoin, like buy the dip. You know what they call buy the dip? Like when it's going down, you buy it and it goes up. As a person, invested heavily in Bitcoin. I lost some money, a few years ago, from $80,000, it went to 20K. It was really a sad time. But now it's almost 100,000, but I really don't. So just like you said, just treat it as a long-term savings account. Don't think about you want quick money, you know. Yeah. So moving forward, I AI is really taking care of everything lately. So how do you see AI, blockchain, and clean energy intersecting in the future?
Well, we have this really unique privilege in the Bitcoin mining space of being kind of at the intersection of all of these things. So, if you've seen lately in the markets, the most notable of which Google took a stake in a Bitcoin mining company. They bought about 16% of their outstanding shares and did a multi-billion dollar 10-year deal to buy some of their capacity to run AI. And you're seeing more and more events like this. You just, in a sense, we're lucky, but it's part of our business model that Bitcoin miners, one of the core competencies that we have to have as a business is to go out and find energy resources. That's the number one expense, it's the number one resource that we optimize for as miners. And it just so happens that that is the bottleneck for getting more AI capacity onboarded. And so Bitcoin miners are in a great position where you have the option to use your capacity to mine, or you might be able to pivot that capacity to AI. And it sounds very easy. It sounds like you just unplug your miner and plug in an AI computer. It's a little bit more intense than that. But we do solve a very serious bottleneck for those companies, especially as they demand more and more and more energy. And I think you'll see those worlds collide even more as time goes on. And part of the reason is because Bitcoin miners, AI facilities, and energy developers all have different problems to solve and have different ways of going about solving those problems. And they use and provide energy in very different ways. So AI wants to be on all the time. And if you interrupt it, you are creating a critical issue for that business model because it needs to be connected all the time. Whereas Bitcoin miners can be very flexible with their energy usage. They want to be online, but they don't have to be online. And it's much more important that they procure energy at a low cost than they procure it 100% of the time. You might be familiar or be able to look up demand response programs or curtailment. Bitcoin miners are very good at curtailment, which actually gives energy back to communities, gives it back to the grid, and does all of these very necessary services to keep costs down for energy consumers. So it's very common now to see Bitcoin mining and AI living in the same facilities and acting as sort of like a shock absorber to how they consume and interact with energy. And you're only going to see that more. And I think it's one of the most exciting developments is that Bitcoin miners now have more to do with their energy than just mine Bitcoin if they so choose it, as long as they've set up their facilities in the right way. They have the right energy contracts and they're in the
Mm.
right locations. But it's definitely one of those intersections that I think you're going to see play out over the next couple decades.
Wow, that's great. That's powerful. So another thing is, while you were talking, I was looking at the back. I saw is that a Bitcoin logo or about a Mind logo?
You mean behind me?
Yes.
So that's actually a painting that my wife gave me, and it is a frozen image of water vibrating at the Schumann resonance. So the same frequency that the Earth is vibrating at, 7.83 hertz, is
Mm.
just captured in a frozen block of water.
Wow, that's nice. If you look at Beyond Profit, because I see you like environmental stuff a lot. So if you look at Beyond Profit, I see that Abundant Mind itself, you guys are focused on people and planet. So how do you integrate social and environmental responsibilities into your business model?
Well, for me, the
Hey, winners, as we continue our journey together today, I want to share something truly special with you. Over the years, I've had the privilege of coaching countless business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, guiding them to achieve breakthrough results and unlocking their full potential. So I'm opening up just 4 slots for my monthly business coaching program. That's right, 4 slots. After being fully booked for the past 3 years, if you're ready to elevate your business with personalized guidance, proven strategy, and a supportive community, I'm here to help you navigate challenges, refine your vision, and achieve your goals. So if you're committed to taking your business to the next level, I want to hear from you. Reach out to me directly at jay at winnercirclewithj.com and discuss how we can work together to build the future your business deserves. So don't wait. This is your moment. Join Winner Circle and let's embark on this transformative journey towards success together. And now let's dive back into today's episode.
most important thing in my personal mission is to create abundance and harmony through mutual uplift with this business. And that means that everybody who interacts with it has to benefit, not just me, not just my customers, not just my investors, but the communities that we live in, the energy providers, everybody that we touch needs to have some kind of benefit. So to me, the most important way that we do that is that we integrate a a unique community project to every one of our sites. For example, one of our existing sites, we use the heat that exhausts out of our Bitcoin mining facility and heat a greenhouse so that we can grow food in the winter and donate it to our local food bank. Site our facilities in rural communities primarily because that's where we can make the most difference in terms of adding new tech jobs. If you go out into the countryside, there's not often a tech company that's looking for people to work there, and so people have a very limited ability to excel in that pioneering field. So we do rejobbing programs, we do education programs, financial literacy programs, internships,
Oh,
and ways for people to get involved that otherwise really wouldn't have any ability to work in the tech space. And my favorite story of this is actually one of our junior technicians heard of us on a podcast, saw the B-roll of showing off our facility and realized that it was in his town. And he actually, in the next few days, ran into a couple of our technicians. He had been looking for a way to work in the space for years and is so brilliant and so smart. But it's a small community, it's a rural community. There's not much in terms of high tech opportunity there. And so he was able to get a job with us. And what I love about that is that one, he's able to do what he loves. Two, he was able to do it without having to move to a metro. And three, that means that he kept his skills, he kept his brain, his intelligence, and his care in his community. He didn't have to contribute to the brain drain of rural America, being essentially harvested for all of its resources to go into these metros. So I really feel like the best thing that we can do is go into these smaller communities, figure out the most important resource that they need, provide that, and provide them a way to work with us so that everybody is uplifted by that. And that can take many different forms. That's just a couple of the ones that are top of mind for me.
So, one thing that stand out to me is how you've built abundant minds, not just around technology. The fact that you build it around empowerment, I don't even know that you really do all that as much, till now. The fact that you're helping people understand that Bitcoin and blockchain is not just about financial tools, and the fact that you're making it a pathway to independence and abundance thinking, I really, really want to say thank you so much for what you do and for empowering people around. I never knew you do that, which is great. So for many listening, the crypto world still feels a bit overwhelming or even intimidating, and we all know that. How would you suggest everyday people, especially those new to the space, start taking meaningful steps towards financial empowerment through Bitcoin or blockchain or, in technology, depending on what they're using?
I really appreciate you saying that. And it's pretty core to our mission to educate. So this is not, as many think, just ones and zeros on a computer that you can buy and sell and make a profit on, but doesn't really contribute. One of my key missions in building this business is to help people understand the impact of the industry, to understand how it can reshape not just the digital world, but the physical world. And that is a long educational journey. And there's so many rabbit holes to go down. So part of what we do is whenever anybody works with us, I mean, of course, they're coming to buy a miner and make money and get passive income and earn in that way. But included in that is one-to-one consults, master classes, education sessions, site tours, all of these things so that we can not just help them make money, but help them become better investors and better equipped to understand the world that is evolving around them. So that's one of the keys is that anything that you get into, I think you should be learning as you earn. It was one of my mentors in real estate. I would always do deals with him and know that I was giving away a part of the deal, usually so that I could learn from somebody who would do it better than me. And more often than not, actually, I would make more money on the deal working with him, even though he was taking a slice of it. And that's because he was bringing years of intelligence, years of experience that I just didn't have in my first few years of doing real estate deals. And I think that applies to anything in life, but especially in this industry, I look for the ways that we can serve people, not just by getting them the best outcomes, but also getting them the best education. Because as you mentioned, this is an industry that most people still don't have a good understanding of. And I think that is a crime, and that people need to at least have familiarity. Even if you choose not to allocate to it, if you don't understand it, I think that you are doing yourself a disservice because it's only becoming more and more important. So for people that are wondering how to learn about it, where to start, I mean, we have a YouTube channel. If you just search Abundant Minds on YouTube, you'll find our YouTube channel. We do all kinds of free education, and that's a great place to start. There's wonderful books that help frame this. One of my favorites that really changed my life is by a man named Jeff Booth. That book is called The Price of Tomorrow, and it doesn't even mention Bitcoin until the very last couple of pages. It's more about setting the context of why it's important, what world we're living in, the pace of technology, and understanding why something like this matters. And that, I think, is probably the biggest gateway for people. Is it's very hard to start with the technology and then work backwards to the implication. I think it's more important to start with the context and the framing of what is the problem. Start with the question of what is the problem that Bitcoin is solving? What is the problem that blockchain technology is solving? And work from there. Because until you understand the problem very thoughtfully and at a deep level, the solution is not going to look that impressive to you. It's going to look like lines of code and numbers and a random solution that doesn't, it's a solution in search of a problem until you understand what the problem is. And so that's where I would recommend people start is educate yourself and educate yourself from the right vantage point.
All right. Thank you so much for that advice. This show is about the winner circle. It's for um, entrepreneurs, for leaders, and for people who care to listen to good stories that can change their lives. So for entrepreneurs and dreamers listening to this show right now, as we are on live, what's your advice for building something meaningful today in today's economy itself?
One, I would say, and this has been repeated very often, is try to solve your own problem because you have more familiarity with the pain of something that you're actually going through and how to solve it for somebody else than just a random opportunity that you see on a top 10s list. So in my case, solving a very painful investment loss and restructuring it so that I could provide the service that I wished I had was the way to build something that not only was successful, but was meaningful to me. One of my coaches, Dan, likes to say that your purpose lies next to the worst thing that ever happened to you. So if there is a horrible event or trauma or tragedy that you can turn into a service or something that uplifts others, I think that has a lot of emotional power that can really fuel your business. The other thing I'll say that is, again, not new, but I just like to repeat is that everything is going to be hard. Entrepreneurship is a very hard road. You're going after rewards and an experience of life that most people will never get to have the opportunity to experience when you're successful. But on the way to that, you have to have some very hard decisions. You have to become the person worthy of having that outcome. And that means facing many challenges and often challenges that nobody else can help you with and that you have to figure out yourself. So I would just say that instead of going in blind, go in eyes wide open, that this is going to be a very challenging journey. And that part of the gift of that journey is who you get to become on the other side of solving extremely challenging problems. And that the more that you lean into that, the more that you seek out discomfort, the more that you seek out hard choices, the easier that your life after that becomes. And the more that you avoid those hard choices, those hard conversations, letting go of someone who's not performing, whatever it may be that you're avoiding doing, that is going to keep you stuck. And the winners are those who understand that they need to face those challenges head on and face those challenges first so that everything else can happen.
All right, thank you so much. Letting go of those who are not performing. I think that's one of the major issues businesses have because probably through probably sentiment or maybe somebody with a family or something. So which is something that's really bring down a lot of businesses. So thank you so much for those advice. So on a final note, if you could leave our audience with one timeless truth about money, purpose, and freedom, what would it be?
That's a great question, Jay. I think the timeless truth, and this goes back to how Bitcoin is designed and why it's so important to me, is that money is truly just a form of energy. It's a form of organized energy. And the person who channels the most energy in the right way, in the most efficient way, in the most effective way, is the one who gets the rewards. And not only do you need to channel it, but you also need to know how to keep it. And I think that there's so many great parallels between Bitcoin and wealth principles that if you understand both how to channel energy, to convert it, and to store it, you have all of the raw materials that you need to build and not just build, but sustain wealth. Because many entrepreneurs build something incredible and they do great at building a business. And then when it comes to actually keeping what they've created, they suffer and they unfortunately don't train themselves to become great investors. And that's the other side of this. And the best entrepreneurs in history also tend to be great investors. And the best investors in history also tend to be great business people and entrepreneurs. And those are two very different mindsets, but they complement each other and essentially act as rocket fuel for one another. So as soon as you have some traction in creating money and creating wealth, I think the next thing that you need to understand, ideally you understand it as you're creating it, is how to keep it and how not to let the opportunity that you've been given, slip away and make the most of what you create in your life.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a vital, very vital information, especially when you talk about how to keep it. We've seen a lot of lottery winners, after some years they lose all the money. We've seen some people who just got rich overnight and they lose the money. So how to keep it is very, very important. That's a that's a note for the day. How to keep You have to find a way to keep your money.
You know,
And when I
we'll
mean
we'll spend we'll spend thousands of hours throughout our career learning how to
mm,
make money, and
mm,
very few people will spend 100 hours learning
mm,
what money is and how to keep it. And if you just change that ratio a little bit,
mm,
you'll have vastly superior outcomes to the people
mm.
who make it and don't learn how to keep it.
All right. Thank you so much for that advice. Keeping the money is very important. Making the money is good. All the videos talk about making the money. And yeah, at Winner Circle, that's also one of the things we try to do. We try to bring in very intelligent people who have different shapes of mind towards achieving different goals from different fields. And the fact that you said this word, I'm sure a lot of our listeners are just gonna keep that in the bag and make sure they start working towards how to keep the money. And for people who really want to get to know more about Abundant Minds, you can all check them out on YouTube at Abundant Minds, correct? Yeah. So just check them on different platforms. Once you just type the word Abundant Minds.
Find us on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, pretty much every platform. If you just search Abundant Minds, you'll get us. And then, of course, our website, abundantminds.com. If you want to book a call with my team to learn more about this and kind of understand your own Bitcoin journey and get some of the one-to-one attention, that's another way to engage with us as well.
That brings us to the end of another inspiring episode of the Winner Circle podcast. I want to say a huge thank you to Beau Turner for joining us and sharing powerful insight on abundance, innovation, and the future of financial freedom. If you look at this perspective on Bitcoin and blockchain and purpose-driven leadership, challenge us to see wealth not just as numbers on a screen, but as a tool for empowerment with what is doing with empowerment and also to impact people's life. And that's one thing we always talk about in at the Winner Circle. So for today, if you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the Winner Circle podcast on your favorite platform, depending on where you're listening to this. Your feedback keeps us moving, so that we can bring in more meaningful discussion going and help us reach even more leaders and dreamers around the world. So be sure to connect with us on social media to share your thoughts, questions, or favorite takeaway from today's episode. We love hearing how this conversation inspire you to take a bold step towards your goal. And I also want to say thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Remember, true abundance start with belief, clarity, and consistent action. And until next time, I'm your host, Jay Adewole, reminding you to keep leading with purpose and living abundantly. Have a nice day, guys.